Welcome everyone back to weekly weather updates, and in today's video I'm going to have the latest from the live radar, run for the latest UKV, have a look at the precipitation and the temperature over the next 5 days, as generally things are turning much more settled and drier. There will be some cloud and some bits and bobs of rain over the next 5 days, but nowhere near as horrific as we've had over the last couple of days with Storm Amy, of course. This is because high pressure is building in. We're going to progressively see that dominate the middle third of October. A lot of runs today to go through, and they're all showing high pressure extending over the top of us and potentially ridging northwards as well. But that part moving northwards is still up for debate. Does look like, though, regardless of what run we look at, a big blocking pattern is likely to start to develop. None of this flat Atlantic pattern we've had throughout September and over the past couple of days, of course, with Storm Amy. Does look like that sort of stormy pattern is going to go away, at least for the foreseeable future. So do remember, if you enjoy my videos, make sure you like and subscribe. Now, if we start on the live radar, you can already see things are drying up at the moment. A few showers and some thicker cloud around today, as we've got the remnants of Storm Amy clearing away. Again, wind has now died down, just a bit of cloud and a few bits and bobs of rain, and that will continue to come in over the next couple of days as we see a few weak weather fronts riding over the higher pressure. Now, temperatures this afternoon are not terribly warm, but they're starting to go on the up as we start to see milder air returning after the cold front. On Friday night, they did bring in much fresher air to start the weekend. So temperatures today back up towards the mid-teens, could get up into the upper teens, maybe even touch 20 degrees in the next couple of days. Now, if you head over to the latest UKV now, you can see we have got still quite a bit of cloud and a few bits and bobs of showers over the next 24 hours, and maybe some, as I said, glancing weather fronts, especially in the north, but don't expect much as we head into Monday. As we progress through Monday to Tuesday, some more persistent rain for the far northwest of Scotland, but again, these are these glancing weather fronts that aren't going to make too many inroads. A few more little bits and bobs of rain clear southwards through Wednesday, again, decaying weather fronts, and that continues all the way to the end of the week. We're still looking cloudy at times, but some breaks in that cloud and a few bits and bobs of drizzle. Generally speaking, though, high pressure is returning. You see it is ridging up from the southwest, and suspect to come next weekend as we head into the middle third of the month. That's where the high pressure is going to really dominate, and we could see some pretty bone dry conditions starting to develop. Now, you see the temperatures this afternoon are starting to recover, but around the mid-teens at the moment. As we progress into Monday, we start to see the temperatures rising a little bit higher, 18 to even 20 degrees into Tuesday. Conditions, again, are fairly mild, high teens once again. Wednesday, again, maybe around the mid-teens, are dropping off a little bit with some fresher air masses, but generally, we're not too far from average, and that continues for Thursday and most likely for Friday. Now, if you look at the latest longer range charts, you can see that we are heading towards a big blocking pattern as we progress towards the end of, or middle portion of October. You can see at the moment high pressure is starting to ridge in. And then you can see high pressure really doesn't go nowhere throughout this week, but it does have some strain from lower pressure systems to our north, and that's why we see these glancing blows from the weather fronts. But look at this, come next weekend, high pressure parked right over the top of us. Perhaps we could see an inversion start to take place. We're at the point of the year where there is possibility of seeing an inversion. And if we do zoom into the United Kingdom look, do we see an inversion? Not really. Not seeing those temperatures dropping away too much overnight. But if we did see a bit of a northeasterly breeze, that could become a possibility here. The winds are falling very light, but there is no sort of chilly air involved, so we're not going to see anything too cold, but that could definitely be a possibility longer term. We've seen that from a couple of the runs today. Progressively beyond that, you see the high pressure tries to ridge northwards, but it doesn't have too much success getting properly up towards Greenland, Svalbard, into the Arctic. We do see northeasterly or easterly winds, and it will bring in some cooler air. You can start to see that fresher air moving in, so it would turn a little bit cold here, and perhaps would start to see a bit of an inversion where the temperatures at the surface do actually start to get pretty cold. And perhaps right at the end of the run, you can start to see some very cold air for the time of year, slowly heading our way from the east. But once again, not a completely dominant pattern, not guaranteed until we see those full-blown northeasterlies moving in. So again, another run where we're hinting at potentially quite a cold middle to second half of October. But all we can see from the latest run is that high pressure block moving northwards, opening the door to that being a possibility, at least in the next week or two. It is going to be very dry. High pressure is going to dominate and probably pretty mild initially before it does turn a little bit chilly. Anything that could produce something a little bit more potent in terms of cold weather. Definitely does not look like it could occur in the near or sort of medium future. Definitely long-term possibilities. You can see here starting to develop around the 18th, 19th of October, that high pressure up towards Greenland. So something to keep a very close eye on, but at least for the short term, don't suspect to see much in the way of cold conditions from this high yet. If you compare it to the GM, it's very, very similar. Again, we see high pressure in control over the next few days. The high pressure start to push right over the top of us. There's a really dominant block there out towards the next weekend and into the following week. And once again, it's trying to ridge northwards. But you can see here there is quite a big area of low pressure just out in the Atlantic putting pressure. So actually, instead of a northeasterly, it could be more a southwesterly initially. And you see a bit of a fight between the milder air and some colder air to our northeast. So again, not clear cut that we're definitely going to go cooler with this pattern. But regardless, all runs still showing this high becoming really dominant there as we progress into the middle portion of the month. And finally, if we look at the latest ECMWF, it is broadly very, very similar. High pressure starting to take over. You can see it is in full control by next weekend. And again, it's slowly ridging northwards, allowing northeasterly winds to develop right towards 360 hours. So it's very similar to the GFS, just not quite as clear cut. And you can see probably still a little bit too early on in the year to see anything too cold pushing in. Again, if we were going to get some proper cold weather, you'd expect to see the -5 isotherms start to nudge in, but it's still too early on in the season to have a big cold pull towards Scandinavia. So in this scenario, chilly, frost could definitely be likely. It could feel like we're heading into winter. And yeah, setting up a pretty cold end to October, but it shouldn't be anything too ridiculous. But nonetheless, a very interesting pattern, all runs showing a big block developing and slowly potentially getting cooler and maybe even colder as we head towards the end of October. Now, if you finish looking at the latest ensemble, so you can see above average over the next couple of days with the southwesties returning for a time, and then we trend back towards average and slowly dip longer term. There are some quite cold runs appearing in the longer term, but similar to yesterday, they're there, but they're not overwhelming. Not every run is there, and it's not sort of the favoured scenario at this stage. It's just one option. But the big thing you can see from the 5th of October, so today, all the way to out the 17th, 18th, we've got no precipitation. So looking very dry. No major precipitation. A few showers definitely possible that won't crop up on the ensembles here, but major precipitation, not seeing any. So very dry, that high pressure dominating. As I said, could progressively turn cooler longer range. We can see that by the dew points slowly dropping off and cooler dew points arriving longer term. That's fresher air masses from the north. So definitely a possibility. But at the moment, the one thing we're certain on is the pressure. And you can see that here, around the 1,030 millibars for the foreseeable future. So yeah, looking like we're heading towards a really dry and block spell as we do progress during the middle of October. And then if finally we look at the latest ECMWF, it's broadly very, very similar. It's a bit warmer at the moment, and then longer term, you can see we're slowly dropping, very slowly dropping, and you see runs slightly operational that we just looked at do go pretty potently cold, a good 5+ degrees below average, and again would bring the risk of frosts and just generally a more of a wintry feel out there. Very similar, minimal precipitation for the next couple of weeks before it does pick up into the final third or so of October, but again that will be some more of those runs that break the Atlantic through. But at the moment, majority keep this high around for quite a long time. So a very interesting pattern, especially off the back of a pretty severe named storm. We're going complete polar opposites towards a big block, lots of dry weather, looking initially pretty warm, and then starting to turn cooler, fresher, and maybe colder as we progress into the final third or final half of October. So anyway, thanks for watching, hope you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new, and I'll see you again for another video soon.